The F-14 was used extensively in support of ground forces during the invasion of Iraq in 2003. And one squadron in particular, VF-154, was tasked by CENTCOM with supporting Special Operations Forces looking for high-value targets on the ground in Iraq. So for insights on those unique secret Tomcat missions, we turn to the guy who was the commanding officer of VF-154, the Black Knights, at that time. My old squadron mate and friend, Captain Seamus Flatley. So let's talk to Flats. So Flats, you and I met at the Naval Academy. You were a year behind me. You're part of the Flatley dynasty, one of the great naval aviation families. Your grandfather was a Grim Reaper in the Pacific Theater, Wildcat driver in World War II. Your father, the viewers will remember when a C-130 landed on the USS Forrestal as a proof of concept of the flexibility of aircraft carriers when aircraft carriers very much needed to demonstrate that sort of flexibility. So that's your dad. So let's pick up the story where you show up to VF-154 as the executive officer. The guy who's the commanding officer makes an interesting suggestion about your recommended training track that kind of sets the tone for not only your XO tour, but what you would do as commanding officer of the Black Knights as well.
Paul Monger, your classmates, encouraged me to become a FAC-A. It hadn't crossed my mind. Really a new capability for the Tomcat squadrons. We pulled into Sydney, did 4 days of Liberty, and I jump off the boat with 3 other JOs, and we fly to San Diego and go to the Expeditionary Training Group, and we get our TAC-P qual, a couple of days out of 29 Palms doing ground controls, and then jump on an airplane and fly back to Japan.
Just so everybody knows, FAC-A, Forward Air Controller Airborne.
Correct.
This is something that another mission area that the Tomcat evolved into. I was there when I was department head. Skip Arney and some other guys were the first generation of CNO syllabus approved FAC-As. It became a qual, not just something you learned OJT wise. Good on Mongo urging you to do that.
Yeah. It's in hindsight, he made the right call. In the midst of all this, Mongo and I are trying to, we've been doing battle with the Bureau. Up until this point, we're getting a lot of test pilot guys as department heads. No one wanted to go to Japan, so you're looking at guys that didn't have any choice. I got a good deal to go to test pilot school, and the detail is going, okay, here's your payback, and you go to Japan. So you had all these test pilot, good guys, but in terms of being tactically astute, like a former Top Gun instructor, they weren't at the same level, and that's where Mongo started turning things around. First guy we got in was Stroker Wyckoff, who's now the vice director of the Joint Staff.
Stroker was in 102 with me as a Cat 1.
Well, he's an outstanding,
a super hard charger,
yeah.
Fantastic talent, and very proud of the fact that he's an admiral now.
Yeah, me too. Stroker came in. Then we got Gordo McDonald, Chili Culpepper, Combat Kimmel, Tuffy Braun. All of a sudden, the deck is stacked, and so we're looking pretty good. By the time Mongo's turned the squadron over to me, we're in really good shape. And Master Chief Holbert's come in and taken the maintenance department and has just flipped it 180 degrees. These guys are churning and burning. There are a couple of folks that probably didn't take a liking to his leadership style, but he and I had an agreement. You do what you do best, and I'll stay out of your way. And
so let's talk about Master Chief Holbert a little bit. I served with Chief Holbert in VF-32 back when I was a Cat 1, franchise maintenance player. So he was actually brought out of retirement to come take this job and do this hard thing all the way over in Japan. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Again, we were politicking to get an E9 over there, and Holbert had been in retirement for 2 years. He just had an itch to get back into the game. I believe Clemente was the fighter wing commander at the time. He said, Master Chief, I'll make you a deal. I'll get you back in, and we'll figure out how to do that. But here's what I need help on. I need you to go to Japan and square the maintenance department away. And he agreed. So he shows up on the eve of 9/11. I think we get him in there 2 or 3 days before, the World Trade Towers are taken down, and the Pentagon's attacked, and everything else that went with that horrible day. But he's there, and then the magic starts happening. He's got his plan in place, and he's grooming the jets. He's grooming the people. He's getting the leadership lined up and moving in the right direction. So by the time Mongo hands the squadron over to me, all I got to do for the next 15 months is stay out of everybody's way. 2003 kicks off. We're deploying. We're going back out and getting ready for what we think may be a combat deployment. We're not sure. All the posturing that you're seeing on the news, what's going on between DC and Iraq, but nonetheless, we think we're headed that way. We take the opportunity to really train hard in the air to ground mode. If you're familiar with Japan, our warning area is out to the east over the ocean. You got to go 150 miles to get to it. It's not like Whiskey 72, boom out of Oceana and head off of the Bay Capes there. We've got to truck out. But while you're doing that, you're going over an island chain, the Izu island chain. And so what we did was we worked up target packages for those islands. So every time you went out, and we always carried lantern. That was the beauty of being forward deployed. We had lanterns on just about every jet. So when you flew a DAC mission, or 1v1 or 2v2, you were also flying an air to ground mission on the way out. You had to hit 3 targets on the way out and on the way back on that island chain. So and having a degraded system was not an excuse. You had to learn how to operate this system in all its different modes, whether it was the jet being degraded or the pod being degraded. And you had to come back and you had to debrief with our intel. And so we really got our close air support, tactics, techniques, and procedures down. And then, with Japan, a very dense environment, we were working a lot of urban CAS, FAC-A stuff at night over the various cities south of Tokyo, which was challenging in itself. But again, all of that paid off by the time we're on the boat in February.
The other thing we haven't talked about is another Tomcat guy, a friend of ours, franchise player, who through a series of things wound up being the CO of your aircraft carrier, Pirate Barbary.
Yeah.
Who I'd known forever. He was skipper of 102 when I was a department head. He was a JO when I first showed up to VF-32 as a Cat 1. Pirate's a great leader, great Tomcat guy, salt of the earth kind of guy. His dad had been a chief, Navy chief, so he definitely took care of the troops, and he was known for that. So he had been XO of Nimitz, a nuclear carrier, and as Ted Carter described in the How to Be an Aircraft Carrier CO episode, it's a tough process to make it from nuke school all the way to being a CO of a carrier. And so the numbers didn't work out, but he wound up being CO of Kitty Hawk. Talk to us about how that happened.
Yeah, Matt L. Myers was the CO of the Kitty Hawk when I got there, did one deployment with him, and then obviously his time was up. And the new skipper came in, and that didn't go well for him. So somewhere, I think, if my memory serves me correct, late 2001, early 2002, they send him packing. And Rat Willard, infamous pilot from the Top Gun movie, he was 7th Fleet, and so he made a decision that the CO of Kitty Hawk needed to be removed, and Pirate was his operations officer, so he put him in place. And Pirate went to work turning that ship around. The first day, I remember the story correctly. He's walking up the brow, and it's 1500, and all the chiefs are walking down the brow. So it's like, what the hell's going on here?
Where are we going, fellas?
Yeah. So Pirate in his soft way of doing business. He turned that boat around, and it was remarkable.
So all the elements are in place for the final act, let's just say, of this episode, which is you focused on FAC A, close air support, using the Lantern pod, in addition to the other mission areas that the Tomcat is capable of. That proves to be fundamental to you getting the nod for what we're going to talk about here.
Yeah.
Maintenance is now squared away, courtesy of Master Chief Hulbert, who's like your general manager of sorts, to use a football analogy. The ship has been fixed by Pirate Barbary. And now the other theme in these AOM episodes, the Amigos of Mooch episodes that I'm doing, is the relationships. And that's what makes this so fun and why we think so fondly of our days in squadrons, which is, Pirate, Timbo Keating, Clem, Kenny Weitzel. We can just rattle off these names of guys who wound up being in key positions that there was really a lot of unspoken trust when they come to you and they're like, okay, Flats, we need this, right? Or they go to Pirate. Pirate is, Rat Willard's chief of staff. He's like, I need you to go be the CEO of Kitty Hawk. I mean, how unorthodox is that? I mean, I can't overemphasize just how much agility and how unorthodox that is to the casual viewer here. So when we talk about thank you for your service, these are the kind of guys that we think back on and got the job done. So just this is all to say, all the pieces are in place for what is going to happen, which fully leverages the ability for people to think out of the box and the agility of this airplane, the F-14 Tomcat. So let's start the story with your XO. Again, we knew it was like the worst rumor or the worst secret in the history of the U.S. military is we're going to invade Iraq. I mean, I was hearing it around the green room at Fox News. It was, as I'm touring in support of Punk's War, this guy walks in, he's like, yeah, we're going to invade Iraq. I'm like, Iraq? Don't you mean Afghanistan? He's like, no, Iraq. And I'm like, wow. I mean, what happened? Because I was there a few years ago doing OSW and everything was kind of quiet, I mean, we kind of had him at parade rest. Like, no, imminent danger and threats and WMD, and it's happening, right? So this allowed you guys to kind of get on the step. Your XO goes to Prince Sultan Air Base.
He does.
He's an LNO. He's the liaison guy, and they're starting to plan the war. Right. So along the way, he hears that VF-154 is getting the nod for this very unorthodox mission. So talk to us about how you found out about that and how you made the decision that you're going to lead the land-based part of this and where it went from there.
The first indications were we had a visitor to the ship. It was, for some reason, it was a beer day. I don't think we had been at sea for 100 days, but we're on the flight deck, just settling down in our lawn chair and cracking a beer. And, someone grabs me and says, hey, CAG needs to see you down in the stateroom. So show up in there, Hawaiian shirt, flip-flops, and shorts. What's up, sir? And we've got a visitor on the ship and kind of laying this idea out. And we thought, okay. So now I got to go find Master Chief. And we got to figure out which of the three carriers in the North Arabian Gulf can support a detachment of F-14Bs from VF-143. And Bs, obviously, they don't have the JTIDs. They don't have the NACE seat. They do have GE-110 engines. We have the same seats as the B. Obviously, we have the TF-30, but we both have TCSs. So, Master Chief kind of figures this out and says, hey, sir, I know you probably don't want to hear it, but we're the best air wing of the three to host those guys. So that gets chewed up a little bit, and it comes back and they go, Flats, we need you to send an ADMOD into IED and see what is needed to support Tomcats ashore. So the idea of Tomcats coming, translanding into the AOR and being positioned aboard a ship was thrown out the window. We're going to go to land base.
So just to back up a little bit, so VF-143 was not on cruise. So they were going to send a detachment of a couple of airplanes to do this. And as you've said, supported by deployed squadrons. So those guys are going to get the nod. And we've had the threat of this when you're at home base and you're coaching Little League, and all of a sudden fighter wing calls the squadron when you're about to go to a concert on Friday. Not so fast. Here's what's going to happen. So those guys are kind of in high warble with the idea that this is going to happen.
Yeah.
That's not what played out.
Not what played out. And what we don't know, in the work up to this back in the late 2000s too, there's a whole cadre of folks that are working time critical targeting out at Fallon, at Nellis, and they are working this and rehearsing it and getting the TTPs down, tactics, techniques, and procedures. How are we gonna penetrate a super MES and do certain things with a ground element? So we get another visit to the ship, and I get read into some stuff. Now, Muddy, my XO, is still back doing his L&O job, and this thing starts quickly unfolding. They finally, he packs his bag, he flies out to the ship, and I think we maybe had a 24-hour turnover, kind of passing the baton in the O3 passageway, and say, hey, Muddy, you got it. I trust you. You're going to do great. I take most of the senior department heads, myself, Gordo, Combat Kimmel, Chili Culpepper, and Tuffy. And I leave him with, I think 11 JOs that had never seen combat. Now, none of us in that ready room had seen combat, other than, doing denied flights over Afghanistan or Bosnia Herzegovina and Iraq in the previous years. But no one had dropped anything in anger or had been shot at. So I'm leaving him on the ship. Well, all the JOs, a couple of department heads, Pappy and Doozy, who is, CEO of a nuke carrier today, and Hurl Morik, Sato Bartosh, who is our token test pilot guy, and a bunch of JOs, and one of them that had just showed up maybe 30 days prior. And I head to the beach and start trying to figure out how we're going to operate out of there, because it's 4 jets and 30 maintainers, and all those maintainers have got to work 2 or 3 jobs and supporting one another to maintain 4 jets. And, the general rule was 10 maintainers per jet if you're going to go on deck, and so we're about 10 guys short.
So just again to put a finer point on what you're talking about, you left behind. The air tasking order was still being written. So yes. Just because you had a detachment doing a super important job on the beach didn't mean the tasking was going to stop off the flight deck of Kitty Hawk.
No.
In fact, the expectation was, 100% sortie completion when you're serving the Joint Task Force. You wouldn't miss an ATO sortie, so forth and so on. So let's, have everybody note that. Now, break. As you've said, you're probably 10 maintainers down by the normal formula you use for a detachment. So you had to leverage some Air Force help in various ways. So how did you find some efficiencies with some of the Air Force squadrons who were there?
The Royal Australian Air Force was there with their F-18As, and they had a composite shop. So in that respect, they were helping us with any type of airframe issues we had to contend with, bending metal and things like that. We had F-16 CJs, we had F-15E Strike Eagles from Moody. The maintainers, being the resourceful people they are, went and formed all these various relationships up and down the flight line. And everybody came together knowing the mission that we were doing to make sure that we were not going to fail. In addition to that, we were taking a COD hit daily. So there were things that we were getting flown off the ship, and it was a priority every day that, our flight cycles are, we were flying from sunset to, sometimes sunrise. And so by the time we got done with our mission, 6, 7, 8 hours, 9 hours later, we were getting word back to the ship. So that COD that showed up the next day at noontime was bringing the things that we needed to get the flight schedule ready for that night. So
you're flying out of a base in Qatar.
Yeah.
Which base was it?
Al Udeid Air Base. It was,
okay.
Home of the 379th Expeditionary Air Wing. The Air Force is running the show. Obviously, been there a while. Quite a complex in terms of the flight line, the messing facilities, everything. We just had to figure out how to fit into their world.
So you have this lash up of really a coalition of airplanes, like you said, Aussies, Air Force assets, fixed and rotary wing, and you're serving Task Force 20, which is the blackest of black worlds. This is black ops. It's not just special operations. These are the black special tier 1 guys.
Yeah.
And you can just imagine, at the height of the post 9/11 conflicts, just how intense this was, right? So, we're going to keep it completely on class here, but basically Task Force 20, which had a rich history before this time, as it's like the Wonder Twins that are assembled by the Justice League from time to time based on world events. And so in this case, it's basically what we call DevGru. You may know it as SEAL Team 6. It is Delta, which if you ask them, they do not exist. And it is special components of Rangers that you don't see in the light of day when you're arcing around Fort Bragg. So what was it like to suddenly be elbow to elbow with these guys and trying to figure out as you said, TTPs and a concept of ops for how you're going to use this capability, including Lantern, to get the job done? First in finding WMD and doing some of their main objectives after we stepped off the point of departure. And then it was working your way down the high value target list. And we remember it was all kind of funny because we had the card deck. Saddam was the ace of spades, I think, that he was the number one target. And then, some other dudes, Tariq Aziz and other guys like this. But that was real to you. Those things were known to you, and these were missions. So talk to us about how you guys kind of immersed yourself in this world and how intense that was.
With the TTPs being developed back at Nellis and Fallon, we had a cadre. We're showing up off the boat. Guido Guyman and the rest of his guys are showing up at the same time. The problem is none of those guys have A-quals. They're not RAG instructors, so they're not flying F-14As. So the first thing we got to do is get them NATOPS qualified. So as soon as we got on deck, that afternoon, we turned around. We got back in the air and we flew circles over the air base. I would take a Rio and Chile would take a Rio and vice versa. And we got these guys qualified. Gordo fly with Guido and Axel Matthews and others. And, we get land and, sign off the paperwork. Okay, you guys on the Omni VOR, you are now NATOPS A.
You're A guys again.
Yeah.
Once you've flown the B, as you know intimately,
you
really do have to kind of reprocess your brain and be a little more ginger with the throttles than you would if you were flying with the F-110.
Yeah, which is interesting. And we'll get to the first mission. But so these guys are all qualled up now. Now you look at the time frame. We don't know when things are going to kick off, but we, in hindsight, our first mission was actually the night before things really kicked off on the 20th. We were airborne on the 19th. But in that ensuing time frame from between the 12th and the 19th, now we're doing rehearsals at night. We're going up and we start slow. These guys, we're flying with, Tuffy's not in my back seat. I've got Free Jack or somebody else. And we're working through the TTPs. We're doing rehearsals. We're going in country. We're doing a couple of things. We're coming back and we go, okay, I think I got the gist of the TTPs. And now we're here on the 19th of March and things are about to kick off. They're going to kick off that night. So it's, and the beauty of this was the whole impetus behind this was to get the ground element and the air component briefing together. It wasn't sufficient enough. They figured out from all the work they had done out in the desert that you couldn't do this from the boat. Now, I think you had senior flag officers that would beg to differ on that, and there was a lot of resistance to putting the Tomcats ashore. This didn't come out till well after the fact, but it was the Vice CNO, it was Air Land, it was, and I think Admiral Nathman had been maybe the N9 at the time or something. But, I learned this after the fact. So there's a lot of resistance to doing what we're going to do. But
yeah, well, we view it, and I know Muddy viewed it as flexibility. Some of the other powers that be view it as an admission of the limitations of being carrier based.
correct.
And so they saw that as not a signal that you wanted to send, with budgets being challenged and inter-service rivalries and people, trying to get their piece of the pie.
Yeah. But it was important that we base ashore because as the FAC-As, each of these missions, TF-20 missions, was going to be led by the F-14 FAC-As. It was a division of Tomcats, or two sections. The breakdown was a section of Tomcat controlled a division of Strike Eagles. So when you looked at the full loadout between the section and the division of Eagles, we had about 44 weapons at our disposal to dispense as we saw fit for each of these missions. And the missions were different. It wasn't SCAR. We're working, obviously for the FSCL, the Fire Support Coordination Line, in these areas called Special Operations Areas, SOAs. So there was no fear that we were going to, have a blue on blue. One, because of the rehearsals and the extensive briefing that we went through before each mission in launching that night.
Again, on class, basically, as you said, you guys are doing FAC-A stuff. You're controlling Strike Eagles. So what was the comm flow? How did you know where to direct them? What stuff did you use to get bombs on target? And what made this so unique and innovative use of the F-14?
Interesting use, because when we look at our Strike Eagle brethren, here they're carrying a Lightning and a Lantern pod. They've got 4 radios, state-of-the-art navigation system, and they're carrying 9 weapons. I think their standard loadout was 2 GBU-10s and 7 GBU-12s. And these guys had to hold hang out in the whole short and burn down so they can make max gross takeoff out of IED. But the con-op was, we would meet in country at a predetermined location, and the timeline would start. And the mission would be to go in and ensure that there was a clear path to get into the area of interest. But
so were these on-call missions, or were these pre-planned?
These were pre-planned missions.
Okay.
Yeah. And rehearsed and timed. Everybody synced up and moving out at the same time. In addition to the Strike Eagles, we had F-16s. We had a Predator in the mix. We even had HIMARS available to us that we could call in, ordnance from the ground. Probably had a gunship in there too. But every time this thing got airborne, there were about 20 plus aircraft in the mix. And, we all had our block altitudes, and it really wasn't much. You were at your altitude and you didn't bust out of that hard altitude to make sure that we were deconflicting the entire time. And once things were happening on the ground, we stepped back, and all we did was surveil the area and pass stuff to the guys on the ground that could handle the situation. And then the way out, once the show was done on the ground, then we cleared the path for these guys. So they're heading south. It didn't matter what was in their way. We made sure that it wasn't a threat. There are other times we go into an area and we would prep the battlefield for a future mission. So we started slow. First night on the 19th, flew an 8.5-hour mission. Back to Guido, and maybe the fact that he didn't have any A time, but we're up at H1, H2, and we're there. We're kind of setting the scene for everybody. And VF2 comes in. These guys, Link 16, JTIDs. I mean, these guys are getting SA 100 miles out, and we don't even have to talk to them on the radios.
Well, they had Ds, right?
They had the Ds.
Yeah.
So they've got a lot of SA coming in. F-14As. We're still working with the TCS, and we actually have Garmin's velcroed our instrument panel because that was more accurate in terms of navigation than the wandering INS. But as we're turning over and we're in the mix of this, and we're all cycling in and off of tankers to stay as tactically efficient as we can. And we take it down to 5,000 pounds and then go hit a tanker for 15K and then go back in. And so there was this constant rope-a-dope going on to make sure that we always had a section of Tomcats over the target supporting the guys on the ground. So typically in a night, you'd hit the tanker 4 times and you're probably pulling down 60,000 pounds of gas in addition to this 20,000 pounds you took off with each night. But that's kind of the way things started ramping up. We flew on the 19th, kind of had a break, got another mission in, was equally as long and complex. So, and we're doing this for a couple of days. I think weather gets in the way. Actually can't get out of IED with the sandstorms. But come the 27th, it was nonstop for 8 days. And, I think the shortest mission was 6.2 hours. Most of them averaged 7+ to 8, 9. And on the 3rd of April, I think I flew the longest combat mission on record at 11.5 hours.
Damn.
Yeah.
How many times did you tank on that one?
6.
Oh my God. Yeah.
We hit every tanker. We hit KC-135s going in. We hit TriStars. And then my final was a BC-10 British tanker. And there's a story unto itself in that one alone. Kind of told from a different perspective from one of my Rios, but it's not how I remembered it. But nonetheless, that was just 24 hours after having lost my wingman.
Right. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So you had your wingman eject, and these were both guest players from NC.
No, actually, Vinny was the guest player. Gordo was my opso.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the pilot, Chad Vincelet, who I'd also been in a squadron with, was a guest player in from NSOC, a SME, right, that shows up and he's going to help you out with your OPSO. So talk to us about what happened there.
Sure. We were, we were up north and we were controlling a division of Strike Eagles. By the time we got up on the target set, Gordo would say, "Hey, look, I don't have a radar and I don't have lantern." So I said, "Okay, here's what we'll do. Well, Buddy lays you your 4 GBU-12s and you head back to the tanker and I'll take care of the division of Strike Eagles." So, we slick him and he heads south to the tanker track. And I control a division of Strike Eagles. And the way we got real efficient at this was rather than pass, a 9 line, we just said, look, just go welded wing. Let's pass codes, laser codes. And when we get to, the pickle point, it'll be 3, 2, 1 pickle. And then you peel off after you release your weapon, go back to the stack and we'll guide, pick up some BDA. And then we go back to the stack and pick up another guy. So we slick a division of Strike Eagles. We've managed to clear 44 weapons in a short amount of time.
To double click on that, I mean, that was massive innovation to be able to bring that amount of ordnance to bear that quickly had not been done before.
No, it hadn't. And, hats off to, the Rios. I mean, I just constantly working the lantern, going in, finding the target, and obviously a lot of communication between he and I and others that were executing the mission about being clear that it was a valid target, and giving the confidence to the Strike Eagle guys that we were not going to put them in a situation that would not work out in their favor in the end. So there we had built up a lot of trust and a solid working relationship with these guys as we're ramping up to this, the 27th of March to the 3rd of April. And that paid dividends. Again, going back, that face-to-face briefing, building the camaraderie, building the understanding of their capabilities, their weapon systems, their mentality, and then having them trust that we're going to go out there and we're going to execute according to the plan. It was huge.
So Chad and Gordo on this one hop have a fuel transfer problem on your wing.
Yeah. So I finished my work and I head down to the tanker track and I'm on the tanker and I go, hey guys, where are you? Hey skipper, we lost an engine. And they were working through the NATOPS, the PCL, all the standard stuff about engine failure, and nothing was getting that engine online. But I'm sitting there tanking, and it's a KC-135. And I'm telling this guy, okay, you need to drag me north. We got to get to this guy, and I need you to get down in altitude. And this guy was having nothing of it. He said, I got to stay here. I'm not going in. I'm not going to crossing the line into Iraq. And I'm arguing with this guy. At the same time, I'm trying to help out Vinny with, now we're going off the books. What could possibly be going on here? And I said, okay, start heading towards RR, which is a base up in the kind of the northwest part of Saudi Arabia.
Viewers of the channel will recognize RR from the Slate 46 episode. That's where the Pavlo helicopters that picked up Boots launched out of is RR. So,
well, there's some guys there again. They start heading that way, and this is where got to back it up. Guido, that first night strike on the 19th, he has a catastrophic engine failure, so he's got to drop into RR, and he's stuck there for a day or two until we can get him out. But we leave the jet behind. We finally get a crew and an engine up there and get the jet back, but not before the guys on the deck, decorated it with their logos and stuff. So. Yeah, but so here we are again going to RR, and as you know, and some of your audience, you have a crossfeed interconnect, and hopefully you're going to get the bidirectionals kicking in, so you've got at least sufficient hydraulics. But you want to get that fuel flow crossing from the bad engine to the good side. Well, we realize that that's not happening. So 5,000 pounds turns to 2,500 pounds. We're headed to Kuwait, realizing we're not going to get there with that amount of gas. We're 90 miles from RR with 2,500 pounds. So the call is, let's go. Still trying to get the tanker to get down and get in front of Vinny. It never happens. So Vinny's moving towards RR, and I take a stepped up position behind him while he's counting down the fuel meter. Here I am I'm 12. I'm at 1,000. I'm at 800. I'm at 6. Around 400 pounds, you see the external lights, go out. We're flipping down the goggles now. Tuffy's got the lantern on the Tomcat. So we observe the ejection sequence, and we follow their chutes down to the ground while we're making a call to those guys at RR. I think the code word at the time was foot race. And so that call even goes out before these guys are feet dry, and they're moving out. We're hanging overhead, but we need gas again. So we turn the CSAR effort over to an A-10 guy. They get picked up very quickly. I hit the tanker and I go home just going, what the hell just happened? But luckily, pick those guys up, and I don't see Gordo till I get back to the boat around the 6th of April. And the next time I see Vinny's on Good Morning America.
That's what it's all about. Highlight of your career, you're on Good Morning America.
Now, the fact that we were flying these TF-20 missions, we had to account for the kits and curves, the KY-58, and our flight packet, which was probably about 4.5 inches thick, had a lot of sensitive stuff in it. So I called the guys up at RR the next day and I said, hey, look, I need you to go back out. Here are the coordinates and blow the place up. And so they go back out and take care of business. So there's nothing left that can be exploited. Shortly after that, the air wing wants to go out and do a mishap investigation. And I said, don't waste your time.
There's nothing to see
anymore.
There's nothing to see there.
Yeah.
So in the end, you guys flew 300 combat sorties. You dropped about 50,000 pounds of ordnance. How long were you guys there end to end?
Showed up on the 12th and flew back to the boat, I think around the 4th or 5th.
12th of March 2003 to the 4th of April 2003.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the debt was only supposed to be about 10 days long. But there was such great success that they just continued to ramp up. So when you look from the 27th to the 3rd, we were flying every night, again, 7+ hours. And we were breaking, I think we came close to breaking NATOP's, limitations. And in 1 month alone, I had flown 80+ hours. So when you think about, our normal month of flying in a squadron.
Yeah, I mean, a 35-hour month would be like flying your ass off. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in
So,
that 7-day period, in one 7-day period, I had flown 64 hours. So I had done 3 months worth of flying in less than a week. You wake up and brief around noontime, get your act together. So you go through an afternoon of briefing and preparation. You'd hit the gee dunk on the way out. I get these, wraps and jelly beans and, all sorts of stuff, bottles of water, and pack that in the helmet bag. And, I was having breakfast, lunch, and dinner while I was flying. I'd get a meal in before I hit the first tanker, go in country, go do a mission, go back to the tanker, have another meal, back in again. And those are things that we didn't think about. Here we are flying these long missions, but the flight surgeon didn't sit you down and say, well, here's some historical studies on extended flight times and combat and stuff like that. We were doing this on the fly and just moving 100 miles an hour and just racking up the hours. I think in that whole episode, in that 30 days of flight time, I tallied up 140+ hours just in those 30 days in country.
Nuts.
Yeah.
So some of the highlights of Task Force 20, obviously they didn't find any WMD in spite of the efforts and you guys being involved in the efforts. That was their initial priority, obviously, since that was the justification for the invasion. They were involved in the rescue of Jessica Lynch. People may remember she took a wrong turn and they wound up getting her back. And then, as we said, once the Saddam statues had knocked over, and now, as you're describing, everybody's egressing, Task Force 20 necked down to about 20% of what they'd had at the height of their effort or at the beginning of their effort. And they started working their way down the high-value target list. So they got Tariq Aziz, some other folks. They kept the Haditha Dam from being destroyed, which would have flooded, southern Iraq, which was something we wanted to prevent in terms of our ability to make it to Baghdad. So, that's no minor thing that they were able to make that happen. And then ultimately, obviously, the capture of Saddam was the sort of highlight of their efforts. Again, innovative use of the F-14 around this, threaded through this. Good job by you and your squadron mates to figure out ways that we can solve this problem. And as you've described, it's basically they come to you like, what can you do? Here's what we need done. What can you do? And this is the beauty of naval aviation is you're kind of incentivized. You're asked to think out of the box. And so people want to paint the military as this thing that doesn't do innovation, right? No, innovation happens in Silicon Valley. It doesn't happen on an aircraft carrier. Well, that's not even close to true. And your efforts and your accomplishments with your Squadron 154 prove that. So Flats, it's good to catch up. I hope we can see each other face to face very soon. And thanks for taking the time to talk about your operations here today.
Hey, Mooch, thanks a lot for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was kind of fun reliving, all those events 19 years ago, almost 19 years ago, as we come up to February of 2023. So, yeah, thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode. If you're a first-time viewer, please ring the bell and become a subscriber so you don't miss anything. Give me the likes and comment. Check the links below for merch, including where to get the Punks Trilogy, my first 3 novels about life in an F-14 squadron, and also now available as a Kindle. So check Amazon.com for that format. If you'd like to help support the channel, please consider using the super thanks, the heart icon below, or become a patron at patreon.com/WardCarroll. And in the meantime, I look forward to talking to you again soon.
I got the cash in the bag, stadium packed. Born a rock star in this life, gone live it up on the attack.